Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Golden Opportunities Coaching YouTube channel. Welcome to those who are new to the channel. Please subscribe, like, comment below. Also, welcome back to those of you who are seasoned veterans of what we do around here. What we do around here is we break down psychological, emotional, and coaching-related topics on a daily basis. We've got over 425 audios for you to check out in a variety of topics, and hopefully there's something that's of benefit to you if you are looking for a coach to deal with habit change, which is going to be today's conversation, or life, relationship, business, or entertainment coaching. Certainly would be willing to help you. Please feel free to reach out on Twitter at PO Perception or in the About Me section of this YouTube channel. You can check out my website. That will give you what you need to know. We're kind of going to talk about things that are bad for your brain and how your brain reacts to the world. So, the first is constant darkness, being in physical darkness. So, the human brain responds to different stimulation. One of the things it responds to most is sunlight, which is why seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, during the winter months, which is a depression that affects people during the winter months, is such a thing because we don't get as much sunlight, which means we don't get the vitamins from the sun, which means our brains may actually react differently, respond differently, create different neural pathways during that time, and ultimately create a lot of challenge. So, make sure, even if you get under a heat lamp or you go outside on purpose in the winter, or you try to create just sitting by a window where sunlight's coming in, even a limited dosage during the winter. Luckily, the winter's going to be over in a couple of months, but it can be a problem. Next is, and this is huge, social and visual media. The effect of media and bad news and negative connotation and people gossiping on social media, people putting each other down, cyberbullying, and all of these things, probably the most damaging thing in the last, I'll call it 20 years, to the psychological state of the majority of Western civilization. So certainly worldwide, but obviously I don't work with as many people in Eastern civilizations as I do Western. But good gosh, there's so much bad news. There's so much you can turn on, and this person's being canceled, and that person's politically fighting, and this religious person's fighting with that religious person. And it's like, good gosh, limit your consumption of bad news. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you tune out and not know what's going on around you. Certainly, getting updates on COVID or updates on what's happening for you locally, or listening to things that keep you aware of what's going on in your city, state, or town. Good idea, but do it 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. Do it in small segments, and then go do something positive instead. Because if you consume too much of the negativity, it will change your neural pathways in your brain, and you're going to become more pessimistic by result. Making up words as I go. Result. And so that will ultimately lead to challenges all the way around. The next thing is, consuming loud music in like headphones, or even going to like concerts where you're right next to the speakers a lot. Now, obviously, we all like to jam out in the car, or crank our stereo up as loud as it'll go from time to time, especially for that special song. But the concept of doing that every day, every month, every week, whatever, can create a lot of problems. First, it's going to create hearing loss. Secondly, hearing loss, if your brain is struggling to pick up sound, can actually kind of reroute memory. So in the long run, over several years, it can create memory loss, brain fog, and all sorts of other negative things. Obviously, we've talked about the next one a lot in the past, so this isn't new. Don't need to stay here very long, but social isolation. Look, the more isolated you feel, the more likely you are to go through bouts of depression, social anxiety when you have to go out in public again, and self-esteem related issues too. Am I attractive enough to get people to pay attention to me? And and when I say attractive, I mean mentally, emotionally, and physically. So if you isolate too often, you can actually make social interaction harder when you need to go back to doing it. which obviously is something that virtually no one wants to do. Why would you want to make your life harder if you could avoid it, right? And so the next thing is, you know, kind of looking at the possibility of reducing screen time. The more time we spend connected to our phones, the more time we spend connected to the internet and computers and uh, you know binging Netflix or Hulu, it actually will kind of put us into a sedentary, almost hypnotic state. And so before we know it, and we've all done this, I was going to get so much done today, and I plopped in front of the TV, and I spent 5 hours watching my favorite binging my favorite Netflix series, and now it's too late. And what's the point of getting up and doing it? I'll just do it tomorrow. And tomorrow comes, and you do the same thing, and you do the same thing, and then the habit becomes kind of that binge mentality, which our brain is drawn to because we like to do things repetitively, most people, and yet it's not necessarily good for us. The dependence on sugary or salty foods is another huge one, especially with the dawn of things like TV dinners and preservatives and additives and people not eating fresh. 100 years ago, they didn't have preservatives. 100 years ago, they didn't have TV dinners. 100 years ago, they didn't have all these things. And by proxy, they didn't have as many health issues related to food. Now, a sugary treat, a cookie, a cake was a big deal because you might have had it once a week, you might have had it once a month. But now, with so many options, varied as they are, and the ability to, stop into the store and pick up basically the equivalent of a vat of sugar at any given moment, we can easily become dependent on those sugary treats, and that can create brain fog and malnutrition and all sorts of other less than desirable things. Now, the next one also relates to food, and I'm guilty of this because I have been a person who never ate breakfast growing up as a kid, partially because I was starved by my parents, partially because I learned not to be hungry in the morning. Um, Now my eating schedule is bizarre just because I work second and third shift primarily, but those who have the ability to eat breakfast on a regular morning schedule, please do so because your brain needs the fuel to eat and kind of consume calories to get you through the day. And the habit of skipping breakfast does require that your brain goes into different resources in terms of how to provide you the energy to get through the day. If you're not eating when you get up in the morning, your brain reacts to the world differently. The second to last thing is limit of motion and exercise. So certainly it's hard for a person with a physical disability or a mental challenge like mental illness, depression, panic disorder, that type of thing to get up and exercise. But creating blood flow in the body, also creating a physical body alteration, can in fact and often does create the positive hormones and endorphins to get us through difficult things. So the more sedentary we become, the more susceptible we become to potentially, negative consequences long term. The last one is a messed up sleep schedule. And so, whether it's oversleeping because you're depressed or undersleeping because you have insomnia, when your sleep schedule is in an unhealthy state for an extended period of time, your brain has to struggle to stay awake, and you may become more dependent on caffeine, you may become more dependent on all sorts of things. But the challenge becomes, what do we do when that happens, right? And so at the end of the day, make sure you're taking care of your mind, body, and spirit in every way you possibly can. And please feel free to reach out. Until next time, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment.